Hello everyone, so welcome back to my channel where I essentially talk about things that I've read or find worthy of comments. And I have decided, just because there seemed to be an interest in game theory, to start kind of like a 30-day challenge where I try to learn every day for a month a bit about game theory. And I found actually a free course by MIT Sloan Management School, which was taught in spring 2015 by Alessandro Bonatti. So again, everything that I'm learning is from this course, which I will link down below. And I feel like it's from MIT and it's actually for business purposes. So it's quite interesting to see, how game theory maybe changes in terms of what we have kind of discussed in terms of your life and then business strategies. But I do feel like that you can still use the knowledge that we might be learning together from the course to essentially your life. So, what is game theory? So, you might be aware of certain examples and case studies like the prisoner's dilemma, where the goal is to find out what action for each player is the best. So, you are thinking alone, so you're thinking about your own decisions, and then you're thinking about others and how they will make decisions. And we have essentially came across now a term which is called allocentric. So you are thinking about others in regards to your own decisions. That is allocentric. So to explain game theory in simple terms, game theory is, you know, a scientific study of how you can make best decisions in certain situations in regards to others. So again, you have thinking about others, you have interdependence, which is that your actions, they do depend on other people. So you're not really independent in how you do your actions. And this interdependence and the allocentric thinking implies that you have co-players, which makes sense because in every situation where you want to extract and exploit the best decisions for yourself, there's always someone who might be losing against you. Because game theory is also kind of like a zero-sum game. So that is, if you make a good decision and you take the whole profit, you are the sole winner. So there is no one, in game theory that could win with you. Otherwise, you both are at a same profit level, which is also explained in the prisoner's dilemma, which I feel like a lot of people know, so I don't necessarily need to explain it. I hope. So yeah, that is game theory. And from what you've heard, it probably makes sense to say that game theory is essential to our life. So why is that? Because in the previous video where I did talk about the rules of your life, that is essentially game theory. If your life is based upon rules that you cannot control and that will make you lose, you are essentially the loser in the zero-sum game. Because think about it. If your life is a zero-sum game, the winners are these billionaires, the rich people, the people that you might admire, while you, on the other hand, you might be the loser who, is stuck in the zero-sum game. You are stuck essentially because you don't know the rules that apply to game theory. And even though I said that for your life, you might need to redesign different rules and different sets, game theory essentially takes so much part in our life that you need to adjust your rules to game theory. And to do that, you need to know game theory, at least in its basics. And that's what we're trying to do. So here's the thing. We talked about rules, we talked about game theories. Now, how do you establish a common ground for your rules and for understanding game theory in its application? So according to the course, you need to structure game theory. So you can do that by laying out the situation. So what is happening by essentially playing out a decision matrix. That is what happens if you do a certain thing, what happens if you don't do it, what happens if you do it. And there's another factor that you need to factor in, and so on. So essentially, you are drawing a flow diagram about your decisions. Then, if you know what you can take in terms of decisions, you can then start to plot strategies, which makes sense because now you can think about what is the most reasonable action that I can take in what I know for a pretty good outcome for myself. Then you do need to realize who your players are. So depending on the situation, you have a lot of players. Maybe there's just one. Maybe there are just a few. So depending on the situation that you're in, you will need to calculate different counterparts that are essentially playing with you. Next, that's the most important thing is the payoffs, because game theory is all about maximizing your payoffs, which can be or should be actually included in your strategy decision making. Because what might also happen is your best strategy doesn't necessarily involve the highest payout. Because going back to the prisoner's dilemma, just to explain it maybe, there are two prisoners and they are told, if you don't tell us who robbed the bank, you both will sit for like 5 years. If you snitch, you get free, but your partner sits 10 years. So that's essentially the game. Now, both prisoners are well, or like the best outcome for both is to stay quiet. Because if both stay quiet, they will get 5 years. If one of them snitches, one of them gets 10 years and the other one walks free. But again, are you confident enough that your partner will not snitch on you? Right? So that is the dilemma. And in this case, it would be smart to not choose the best decision for yourself, which is to snitch, because you don't know whether the other person is snitching. So you both stick to essentially a moderate payoff. And that's what you need to think about when you make strategies. Apart from that, the professor ends the lecture with showing essentially three key traits that you need to think about additionally um, in what we have discussed. And one of them is the limits of rationality. Again, Prisoner's Dilemma is a pretty good example. One, do you think staying quiet is a rational option if you are not sure whether your partner will not snitch? Because if he does, you're screwed, you're sitting 10 years. So think about rationality in terms of your own and can you trust others to behave rationally? That is economically wise, actually. I feel like it's not necessarily explaining game theory, but I feel like that you can take the rationality from econ. So that is again making the best the best choice for yourself, but in terms of profit, monetary profit. But I'm not quite sure. Then you have the commitment of others. That is, will they hold, for instance, their promises? Do they threaten you? Do they actually do and plan out the threats that they did? Are they following up on plans? Same goes for you. So how committed are you in the situation for a certain action with a broader context? Because if you say, well, I want to change my life, right? The best decision at this point is to strengthen your commitment to your vision. That's the only thing that you can do, which is like a positive zero-sum game. Because if you start being committed, you cannot lose because there was nothing to lose except not being committed. Then there is a huge advantage which you might encounter in these situations, which is private information. So if you're able to know certain things that other people don't, that put you at an advantage, you need to think about how you want to incorporate these in game theory. And that's it. I hope this gave you kind of like an overview about what game theory is, the certain case studies, and how you can essentially think in basic levels about game theory and how it can affect your life. Apart from that, I don't think I have anything else to add. Again, lectures are down below. And maybe just to say it again, it's not my knowledge. I'm learning it with you. So apologies if I do ramble. I went over the slide in 10 minutes. So I guess you will see how good I explained that based on the fact that I didn't spend a lot of time on it. And then see you for tomorrow for day 2.